Yes, I would like to begin. Does anyone have a table tote?
I'm worried about my computer.
Next questions because I don't. We have a table tote.
They have one.
Got some CX questions.
This is going to go 4 minutes.
I know. That's
And
why
20 minutes.
That's,
Oh, could you also send me the next?
This might be too.
Can you just send me all of it? Oh, it's late.
When you start in like 10 minutes? 10 seconds. Oh. I was like, nah,
Dude,
no,
Lawrence. That
means now!
Did your computer just break?
No, it's just at 20% and then turns really fast.
Okay, we are
6
about 30
minutes,
minutes behind schedule,
What?
so
We can do
we can get
6
this show on the road. On the affirmative, we have Oliver Sussman, and on the negative, we have Bennett Eckert. They will be doing...
No.
Yeah. Okay, they will be debating the LA2 topic. So let's just get this started.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't see anyone. If yours dies, you can just tell mine. Oh, Jesus! I feel like I need one of those like safari hat things. Is there not like a medium setting? Can you see anything?
No.
I feel like I'm about to give the 104th showing of Oklahoma. What? It's a musical.
What?
The joke was like I'm on a stage under very bright lights, so I'm about to perform. Should I even time the one I see? Why? Nah, I'll just wait for CX.
Okay, I don't want like random people be like, you went over so many times. Is everyone ready? Yeah. Everyone needs to say yes. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Moral disagreement means epistemic reliability must be the starting point for ethics in Bobby 13. Widespread error reduces probability that beliefs are true. People's moral beliefs are rife with error. We should retain only those beliefs about it that we have a reason to believe through, formed through reliable processes of very skeptical conclusions. That means util phenomenal introspection is most epistemically reliable in Bobby 13. If I consider my experiences of loving yellowness, would it be like if others had the same experiences, must think they're having bright experiences. Similarly, if in a pleasant moment, I think must think they're having good experiences. If they have the same experiences, their experiences will have the same intrinsic properties. Thus, util. Thus, the standard is maximizing pleasure and minimizing pain. Additionally, one moral substitutability is true and only consequentialism explains it. Senator Armstrong 92. If there is a moral reason to do X, and if A cannot do X without doing Y, and Y will enable A to do X, and there is a moral reason to do Y, I call this principle moral substitutability. He continues, what gives me a reason to start the mower is the consequence that I can mow the grass. He continues, unconsequential is claim if I promise to mow the grass, there is a reason to mow the grass would not follow. I have a reason to start my mower since I promised to start my mower. Second, actor specificity. A, governments must aggregate since every policy benefits some and harms others, which also means side constraints for each action. B, states lack wills or intentions as policies or collective actions. C, no active mission distinction. Governments are responsible for everything in the public sphere, so action is implicit authorization. Actor specificity comes first since different agents have different ethical standings. Takes out util calculi since they're empirically united link turns them because the all would be no action. Third is metaphysics. A, language cannot describe reality, which means a priori knowledge fails. Counter to 7. Rational thought is inseparable from language. One life is never totally the same, and another concept belief is formed by the arbitrarily discarding these individual differences or understanding the rules based on this falsification of experience. Empiricism solves it doesn't rely on linguistic representations of physical instantiations. B, we have no unified consciousness. Parfit 84. Surgeons have cut fibers. The effect was the two separate views of consciousness. Psychologists can thus present questions that two have their visual field and receive two different answers. Util solves it relies on a state of affairs, not unified actions or the separateness of nations. Thus, the plan: the United States federal government should pass the Universal National Service Act as proposed by Rep. Rangel, making registration for national military service compulsory in the United States, with civilian service opportunities strictly restricted to those unable to enter the military. Rangel 03. Mandatory military and national service for all of our young people without exceptions for college. The president will determine the number of people, and those cannot serve in the military will be required to perform other national services. Contention 1 is adventurism. The civil military gap is increasing. Congress lacks vets, and ideological tensions strain the gap, causing the military to resist civilian leadership. Weather B07. The lack of political representation by former military members also suggests that the representation of veterans in Congress has been rapidly decreasing. The number of congressmen and congresswomen who are also veterans is only about 1/3 of what it was. Only slightly more than 1% of members of Congress have a child serving military service. Is not a value that has withheld the test of time. Another factor is former powerful military members attacking the current administration. The attacks of former high-profile military officers clearly demonstrates a perceived animosity, and the gap sustains U.S. imperial aggression and isolates the ruling class from serving and promotes an us versus them nationalism. Commitment to imperial aggression is long-term and essential component is the modern professional army. Analysts underestimated the scale of conscript in Vietnam were drawn from all society. The dissatisfaction permeated U.S. society. Demise of conscription has been a very positive development from the point of view of imperialism. There is a conflict of interest between the individual citizen and the professional soldier. By minimizing conflict, an army allows for military aggression. And adventurism dooms our nation to collapse. It causes an international backlash, escalates conflicts, and endangers us. Survivals. Grider 16. The war draws this country into one more battlefield than another until patriotic fervor is exhausted. While most Americans wanted peace, the American people are pro-war so long as the top sin somewhere else. What brought down mighty empires of the past was hubris. Might America be next? We are now governed by an obsolete militarism. Our overreaching military doctrine suggests masculine insecurity among military planners, and specifically U.S.-Korea war is coming now. A preventive strike will spill over Manzulo today. With North Korea's second test of an ICBM, the North Korean regime continues to demonstrate their effort to become a nuclear threat. These actions have raised tensions on the peninsula to a high and dangerous level. There are increasing considerations of turning to a military option, with some suggesting a preventive strike. A conflict on the Korean peninsula as a result of presented military actions rather than a preemptive actions in a strike. A crisis would have grave consequences for the United States and our allies in the region. We would run the risk of willingly endangering two allies. There's no way we could be sure that preventive actions would not set off a second Korean war. That causes extinction. Hayes and Hamill Green 10. Consequences of failing to address the threat posed by North Korea are serious for the whole community. There's a possibility of nuclear attack. Even a limited change could result in a holocaust. Temperature over the continents would decrease. A decrease in rainfall would follow. Smoke congestion would cause a huge reduction in ozone. Subsequent nuclear breakout. There could be subsequent nuclear breakout and then a chaos of nuclear war. Contention 2 is solvency. 5 internal links. A. Congressional opinion. The F causes Congress to hesitate on aggressive military efforts. Wrangle 03. If we are going to war, the government principle must share sacrifice with those calling for war. Knew their children were to be placed in harm's way. There would be more caution and willingness to work with the international community. A disproportionate number of minority groups makes up the military privilege. Americans are absent. P. Military resistance. The F enables opposition to foreign wars within the military world. Or 5. A popular militia is a bulwark against tyranny. Reflect the diversity of the political expression. It would naturally resist military adventurism. To revolt during the Vietnam War demonstrated that a conscripted army is not a politically reliable. It forced the government to withdraw from a misguided war. Policymakers don't want citizens' army, but rather a compliant military that will go anywhere and do anything. C. Public opinion. The F destroys public support for adventurism. Horowitz and Lewandowski 11. Moving from all volunteer to a construct decreases support by 70%. Americans are also opposed to conflicts with higher expected casualties. The draft always has a large and significant effect. Reintroducing the draft decreases the probability of support by 23%. Young responders more supportive deploying troops in the all-volunteer condition exposed when they will have to shoulder the cost. C or D movements. The F causes widespread public movements in favor of pacifism. Sirota 13. In the absence of construction, dissent becomes a low grade, not the kind required to compel policy changes. Wars remain an abstraction of new items that does not reflect most people personally. Americans reflexively move towards a military solution before they try other elements. The draft is the only way to compel Americans to truly care about foreign policy and national security decisions. Ending the conscription about quashing popular opposition or weakened our connection to the armed forces, the only safeguard against the unbridled militarism. E. Decision making. Civil military gap causes irrational decisions in the afsols. Also means we'll fare better if we do fight. No co. FICO 6. The schism threatens the nation's welfare. It hurts the nation's ability to make sound military choices. We benefit from having veterans in every corner of our decision-making apparatus. The problem perpetuates itself. Young people don't serve today, then we won't have older veterans in leadership positions tomorrow. A schism weakens the armed forces. The military becomes them instead of us. Such a force will be overused and underled, and that support will run out. The grunt is best equipped by trained and served when the opinion makers have a personal stake in his or her well-being. I thought they were going to clap.
Okay, is everybody good? You all have to say yes again. Yes. I just love that. Okay. First question, at least 2, maybe 3 of the 1AC solvency arguments are about decreasing like public support for war. Where's the argument that Trump or anybody is responsive to public opinion?
Well, first of all, so the point is that, like, if we were to, like, literally declare war on North Korea, Trump cannot just exo that, like he has to get congressional approval, which in turn is probably pretty reliant on the congressional people's constituents. I mean, congressmen are obviously, like, responsive to their constituents' desires because they want to be reelected.
Wait, where's that argument in the 1AC?
Like, I think you have to make the argument that public support is completely irrelevant. It's probably, like, pretty unintuitive in the context of politics.
Next question about that. Your Brink evidence is about North Korea is not about Congress declaring war. It is about Trump doing a strike, which means that only Trump would have to ignore public support for your impact to happen. Why is Trump responsive to public support?
Well, so again, it's not a question of like, well, so like, there's never been a case where the Trump just like, where the president just like unilaterally exiled an actual foreign adversary. Obviously, this is distinct from like things like Obama's drone strikes in the Middle East, because this is the case of actually attacking another country. He probably requires some degree of support from other individuals. Also, he probably wouldn't want to do that if everyone would just literally hate him, because like they would be putting his
uniqueness.
Like,
okay,
Trump is not
next
that smart, but he obviously wants to like maybe be reelected in the future. Like there is some degree of care that he would have.
I don't think he cares. Next question. Your evidence says that North Korea is being aggressive now, and a preventative strike would be bad. Read a line that says there will be a preventative strike. That's not just like it is an option and it would be bad if it happened.
Yeah, no, the card is like the military people are literally like considering this as an option once.
Right, but something being an option is not a claim it will happen.
Well, like they are like obviously if we were certain that this would happen, we would like be in deep trouble right now. So clearly it's not going to happen. It seems
like we're
tomorrow.
Not in that much trouble right now.
Obviously, all the best we can do right now is evaluate the potential military strategies and responses that.
Right, but your argument doesn't make a predictive claim that it is the most likely of the options to be chosen, does it?
If you have a card that says that they are actively unlikely to,
but it doesn't. The card doesn't say that.
I mean, I don't like it doesn't like explicitly talk about other potential options that they are taking. If that's your question.
Last line of questions probably. Your evidence is about a preventative strike being bad, but all of your solvency evidence says that people would be less likely to invade countries because they don't want to put their children at risk. How does a preventative strike with no boots on the ground put them at risk?
Well, so the argument is like maybe the preventive strike would happen, but it wouldn't result in escalation. This also answers your initial question.
Wait,
it's not just a question of the preventive strike.
That wouldn't result in escalation?
The Manzullo evidence says
What
that.
is it?
Yeah, so the Manzullo evidence says that a preventive strike will happen, and then Congress will decide to like literally invade North Korea and start a new Korean war.
No, it just says a preventive strike would be bad because Korea would retaliate.
It says that these actions have. It says that a conflict in the Korean Peninsula as a result of preventive military efforts rather than preemptive actions in crisis would have grave consequences for the United States and our allies in the region. It says that it would escalate to a Korean war. That is clearly different from just preventive strikes. The app says that it solves that escalation.
Sure.
Okay, my computer is... Okay, I'll try it now. Hopefully it'll be okay.
All right, so while the wooden C is prepping...
Can I go pee?
Yes. Also, so while Bennett is using the restroom / prepping, does anyone have any questions about what has just happened? So any arguments in the affirmative case, pieces of evidence that you have questions about, anything? Because Oliver will answer them for you. Yeah. The taglines for the contentions?
The contention 1 was adventurism, and contention 2 was solvency. I mean, are we gonna like? Well, okay. Well, my computer's charging, so let's see. That they have to aggregate because every policy benefits some and harms others. Oh. No, it's that like if they say it's hard to calculate, like governments do and have to use util, so that proves that we can calculate. Like it's not the best argument. Like what? Yeah, it was a specific plan text. The plan text was compulsory national military service. And the advantage or the net benefit to the plan was that it would create an incentive to not be adventurous, meaning that people would be less likely to support decisions to go to war because there would be less of a gap between the military and the civilians, and people would like literally know people that would be at risk of dying were they to go to war. There are no theory spikes.
Any other questions?
What? What? Oh, that specifically it prevents a war with North Korea happening, which would cause extinction.
Any other questions?
Can I see my framework for a second?
Also, yeah, you don't need to select pens.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Yes.
Wait.
Yes.
Yeah, so the argument is that the point of Sinababu's Sinababu writes this article that is like a lot of our moral beliefs are likely to be erroneous, proven by the fact that we have so much disagreement right now. So our first step should be to figure out a reliable process or way in which we can formulate moral knowledge. And his argument is that that phenomenal introspection, or like thinking about what it would be like for other people to experience the same phenomenon, is a reliable basis for moral knowledge. It makes it eminently clear to us that pleasure is good and pain is bad, which is sufficient to prevent us from having erroneous moral beliefs.
Cool. No other questions?
Yeah, well, I mean, both of those arguments prove that Deant is not the correct framework in the context of government.
But it is, so. I was born ready. Okay. Can I have this hand? Hi, friends. That was enthusiastic. I was getting there. The order is too often. The case on case it will be the framework with like a little overview that you should have some space for, and then the Korea advantage and solvency. On the advantage pages, you should just flow like all the arguments top down. What? Two off case. On case, it will start on the framework, and there will be an overview, so you should have some space for an overview. And then on the like contention arguments, you should just flow them all top down. Oh, I should do the whole timing apparatus thing. Gotta get my 2 analytics I wrote down. Okay. Is everybody ready? Never mind.
Lawrence.
Wait, does your cable not start that far?
It.
No.
No.
But you sent me the 1AR, right?
It moves a little. You have one? Oh.
Ooh. Propaganda. Yeah, I don't think that's gonna help at all. Maybe. Maybe. Oh, you're right there. Okay.
There. Yeah. Show of hands, should I untie the knot before the 1 and C?
No!
Okay.
I got speeches to give. Have you seen that Judge Judy meme?
No.
It's like,
Yes, okay.
it's so funny. Okay. Well,
Wait, can you,
it's-
is the new 1 and C changed?
no, not really. I like wrote one of these analytics into a tag, so I can send you that tag.
Whatever. Okay, just go.
Yeah. Same order. Is everybody ready? Yes, Bennett. Thank you. Okay, cool. I'm gonna start.
Force is only justified for the protection of freedom. The state must grant decisions on a basis that all rational agents must accept. Also, turns out to act or specificity. The state must be founded on a mutually agreeable basis or it can't exist. Also, we don't rely on a priori knowledge. Hudson, 10. Force is only justified when it's necessary to protect freedom. Force cannot be justified and have beneficial consequences. Rules justifying interference on paternalistic grounds implicit in deliberation. There is a recognition of rational nature as a source of practical necessity for any value to be claimed authoritative. A rational agent can ask, why should I care? They are not values. A rational agent has to accept they are not independently authoritative by virtue of acting. A rational agent cannot reject rational nature without contradiction. For values like happiness, there can be no answer. The only ground which freedom can be restricted is to protect rational agency. Thus, the standards respecting freedom, contention, voluntary enlistment is good, but coercing others to do it to pursue that end is not. Obviously, violates the freedom to choose. Thomas 11. A military draft is repugnant in a society based on respecting human beings as ends themselves. Individuals in a free society must take responsibility. Each individual must choose as an individual when and how to do so. Next off. Business confidence and economic growth is on the rise, but is teetering. Continued growth is key. Wiseman 614. Fed is set to raise short-term interest and vote of confidence. International agencies have lately issued upbeat reports. Neither the United States nor the world is likely to regain robust health that prevailed before the recession. The outlook is the least encouraging factors have expanded nice rate. Months of the market is surging profits. Low unemployment is giving the Fed confidence. Most economists expect the U.S. to pick up, despite a relatively recent upbeat assessment. The World Bank calls the global economy fragile, and the plan spends billions. New personnel would be expensive. Lacy 3. We are inducting more than 1.5 million draftees a year, equipping and training the force with the same standards. Our current military could cost $3 trillion and $1 trillion a year to maintain it, and significant spending tanks the economy, causes a freakout that destroys growth for a long time. Baccia 13. Overhang reduces growth significantly, and for a prolonged period, creditors may lose confidence and demand higher interest rates. The government is attempting to sell more debt, and private bondholders are willing to buy. The government must tax more, which will reduce economic activity, or take debt, which will cause the debt spiral. Higher interest rates have a real and pronounced impact and translate into less investment. A weaker economy would provide fewer career opportunities and lower wages. That matters for economic growth. Public debt could push public interest rates even higher with severe impacts, and decline causes Trump diversionary war. No defense and turns case because Trump will be more adventurous. A Foster 16 analysts have expected world leaders to launch international conflicts to deflect popular attention away from problems at home. Argentina's 1982 invasion of the Falklands. Certain traits predisposed leaders to be more belligerent behavior. When faced with a faltering economy, leaders are less likely to put together conflicts. Direct response, they divert attention from the problem. The model would predict a president with Trump's numbers would respond to even a minor economic downturn with an increase in the use of force. Where the misery index equal to October 2011, Trump would initiate more than one major conflict per quarter. The case framework overview. One calculative regress. Usual would require us to calculate how much time we spend on calculations and so on means it paralyzes policy and we're never able to take productive action. Second, act util collapses rule. Util people always try to make the right who try to act in the right way make mistakes and we're never able to make decisions. Only rule util solves with the rule that's most likely to do more good. With the rule that's most likely to do more good, the rule is the anti protection of freedom is a good baseline because without direct violation of each other's sovereignty, we're less likely to do them harm. Third, valuing state affairs concerning a person assumes that we value the person in the first place. You wouldn't care about a person being sad if you didn't value that person. Means util presupposes the ontological obligation to respect humanity, or at least presupposes humanity has some intrinsic value. 4, can't aggregate people have different conceptions of pleasure and pain. There are people like masochists who enjoy physical pain. The one he sees doesn't tell us what universal norm to use in aggregation, so we can't use that framework. Offset Babu. One, we solve moral disagreement. All agents must implicitly recognize the value of their own rationality to make a decision. That's Hudson. The second, aggregation is unjustified. Even if pain is bad, we should treat it in a deontological way because of all consequential and bad arguments. Off, Senna Armstrong. One, hypothetical imperative solve. If I have a reason to achieve an end, I also have a reason to achieve the means to that end. Second, actions are holistic. Mowing the lawn and turning on the lawnmower, both part of the same action of keeping promise. And off, Parfit. One, this only applies if our brains are split, but that's not how we live. You also took the warrant out of this card. Second, even if we are metaphysically unified, we must act as one agent, so we still have practically unified consciousness. On the Korea advantage. No rank for the adventurism of fantasy impact should have happened by now if all their evidence is correct, and continued debt crushes readiness for war. So the dissent turns the case for 13. The question of whether the nation will continue on the path of promises does to pay debt at 200% if the U.S. continues to borrow, may not be able to borrow to defend itself in an unforeseen war, and Trump will strike North Korea anyway. If the threats of nuclear won't deter, then neither will a bunch of untrained soldiers. Also, all their evidence about a preventative strike, which one, they haven't proven will actually happen, and two, is not what their solvency evidence is about. So either way, they don't. So Baker also today. Trump threatened to unleash fire and fury against North Korea. Language evoked the horror of a nuclear exchange. Trump sought to deter Korea. Officials have said a preemptive military strike is among the options they've made available to the president, and multiple causes to adventurism, backlash against terrorism, Syria, and Donald Trump himself. And Trump will shift to PMCs anyway, so none of their advantage is unique. Eisenberg 17. A president who campaigned on the basis of having secret plan to beat IS might have no alternative to using contractors. Trump made fighting terrorism a pillar of his election platform with special forces stretched to the breaking point. Private contracts will be in high demand, which means also none of their solvency evidence applies, because even if they do decide to invade, they will just use PMCs instead of soldiers, so there will be no public backlash against it. And the North Korea scenario is too soon to solve. North Korea war could happen today, as indicated by both of us yelling today a bunch of times, so movements against it won't form fast enough as a result of the plan to resolve any of their impacts. The solvency section, so that second contention thing.
Conscription creates the illusion that we've infantry soldiers and seduces leaders into spiraling escalation. Vietnam proves empirically answers all their solvency claims. Feldman 12 amnesia about Vietnam is stressing American support of the war until 550,000 troops were on the ground exceeding the maximum commitments in Iraq and Afghanistan. The draft created an illusion that we had unlimited potential manpower to seduce our leaders into spiraling escalation. The military makes good diplomats now, empirically proven in Afghanistan and the Balkans. O'Hanlon, 3 excellence of the U.S. military is present in peacekeeping missions in the Balkan and warfighting missions in Afghanistan that required coordination with local allies. Troops are also diplomats, and conscription causes crime and massive inequalities, which fractures protests. In terms of the case, Tomlinson and Lindquist 16 are paper stands out by studying modern cohorts using comprehensive set of market outcomes, applying a new identification strategy, providing a clean evidence of incapacitation. Effective military service significantly increases likelihood of crime and the number of crimes between ages 23 and 30. These across all crime categories, large in magnitude incapacitation, are not large enough to break the cycle of crime. There's no effect of the likelihood of higher education. Conscription reinforces already existing inequalities and likelihood of future success, and crime tanks U.S. soft power. Falk 12, soft power complements hard power. The strategy may not work if the U.S. continues to be seen as a nation abode of crime. They make a plea of democratizing the world, but offer no prescriptions for restoring the health of the American body politic, and soft power is key to self-extinction. And the AF, Lagone 11, the United States has an unrivaled ability to confront terrorism, nuclear proliferation, financial instability. Soft power is crucial, understanding the best, leveraging this role. Soft power played a crucial part in turnaround for the U.S. foreign policy. Reagan sought to transcend the nuclear balance to terror with defensive technologies when the American president has no problem with France combining soft power better than the United States. Something is seriously amiss, and be skeptical of all other studies about crime. Ours is certainly the best. So Tomlinson and Lindquist 16, there's little consensus. Some of the site found draftees had lower earnings than non-draftees. Subsequent fakers supplying the gap closes. Effects are mixed. The effects of conscription may change over the life cycle. Also means that even if we don't get our soft power impact from crime, we just have an independent crime disad, which means that if we want a risk of a disad to the case, you should just vote on that. Also, all of their solvency evidence is also is awful. It is not about Trump. It just says that his link or his internal link evidence is about Trump using a preventative attack. All of his solvency evidence is about Congress. It also all assumes that they would be receptive to public opinion, which Trump is obviously not, given that his approval rating sucks and he keeps doing stuff.
All right, ready?
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the NC. The card discusses why we have to value rationality. Where does it make any sort of link between freedom, non-coercion, and respecting human moral agency?
Rationality is the capacity to set and pursue ends in our contention.
Where does your card specifically make the link? I know that obviously in the context of Kantianism they are related
what the
concepts.
Word means. So by definition,
rationality means the same thing as freedom, Bennett.
Well, the rationality is the freedom to set and pursue ends.
Okay,
so
let's talk about. Let's talk about the side. Your link evidence is from. Your link evidence is from some one single military officer who was interviewed on a website called findarticles.com. Okay, that was obviously not related to my question. My question is, why is this random officer who is just being interviewed on a website called findarticles.com reliable, and where is the single warrant in the card for why maintaining the army would be that expensive?
I do not think that the fact that they are one single officer in the army and they have experienced training officers and know the cost of it means that they are unqualified.
Wait, how would they know the cost of a policy that hasn't been implemented just because they happen to be in the military?
Because it's not a question of whether they know the cost of the entire policy, rather
it's not. The link evidence about how much it costs is not a question of how much the policy costs.
They know the cost of training individual officers. They know how many officers would come in as a result of the policy, and then you do the whole math.
Wait, this person was in the administrative section of the military and knew how much it costed to train each individual person?
Well, yeah, it does say they were in the military, and he does make the claim that he knows that. So yes and yes.
Okay. Let's talk about the case arguments. So the PMC's argument. This is about ISIS. How do we use PMCs to invade a country?
You pay them, and then you fly them there, and they go there. That's what PMCs do. That's literally what PMCs do. Their job is to
snarky.
invade
Obviously,
countries.
the talk about PMCs that's happening in the school is in the context of paying them to go to the Middle East and fighting terrorists.
Yes, and
Where do you have a single card that says that a president would ever do this in the context of invading North Korea?
The argument is that.
Do you think that?
The argument is that if Trump wants to invade someone, he is likely to use PMCs because they are in high demand, and he is already strained on the number of soldiers he has.
Okay, whatever.
So if he's invading anywhere, North Korea.
Okay, why does conscription cause crime?
The argument is that an empirical study says that it did.
What is a reason why that could be the case?
I think there are a couple possible reasons. One is that the military empirically inclines people to like violence. It also means that by the time you're 23 and do not have any education because you spend all your time in the military, it becomes much more difficult to get a job.
Okay, you say it crushes protests. Where does the card talk about that?
It doesn't. That's like an analytic argument.
Without a warrant? Okay.
I think it has.
All right. Why should I be skeptical of other studies? What is this study? Like, what was the, like, how do we know it's not just some
So we isolate a bunch of things, which is the first sentence. It says that our study is comparatively better than others. It studies modern day cohorts as opposed to like really old groups. It uses a comprehensive set of outcomes that spans across time. There are 3 others.
All right, while Ollie is prepping for the 1AR, does anyone have any questions for Bennett about any arguments that you read, why you read them, the cards, etc.? Seems very unlikely.
It was pretty good. Lexington. Yeah, so the argument is that any sort of demand on us must be authoritative in some way, right? It has to be something that we can't just be like, why should I do this? Because otherwise it would not be a demand on us. And we can ask like, why should I care about people's happiness? And why should I care about a bunch of other things? But we cannot coherently ask, why should I care about people's rational agency? Because to demand like that question is like to ask a reason for caring about reasons, which implicitly concedes that we should care about reasons. It also means that like when you ask, why should I care about rational agency, you are exercising your rational agency to do that. So you cannot like do things that deny rational agency without contradicting yourself. The spending disad, the argument is that the economy is doing swell, but not that swell now. And the plan costs like a lot of money, which was the point of contention in CX, and that like costing money tanks the economy. Martino, your hand was up earlier. Well, I mean, crime is like, it hurts people, so it probably makes people sad, which is bad for you, Till. Otherwise, they wouldn't be crimes. And then there's the soft power impact of crime. Yeah, there's. Oh. Yeah, sorry. The first one is that they apply a new identification strategy to identify like whether people have committed crimes. They have clean evidence of the incapacitation effect, which is like the effect where because you're in the military you can't commit crimes. So they have like the best evidence on that effect. And it says that there is very little consensus among other studies, but this study gives a definitive result.
I'm good.
Oh, I have to float the NC.
Do you though?
All right. You have a point.
The order is case, starting on the framework, then the advantage, and then the NC, and then the disad. Case on the framework, and then the advantage, and then the NC, and then the disad. What? Just like it's all together. Is everyone ready? Bennett already lost the framework debate because he's conceded actor specificity. The governments don't have intents, which means that it's impossible for them to use data. They also have to aggregate because some policies benefit some and others. He's conceded actors back outweighs because different agents have different ethical standings. Now the overview arguments. You say regress, but it's not just because we're not perfect doesn't mean we shouldn't try to use util. Also, there's no impact of freezing action. There's impact justified. They say rule util, but rules involve more mistakes because there are obviously exceptions we should make, which means it's comparatively worse. You say that we have to value people first, but it's a question of what we value about them. My framework indicates that it is a question of their subjective desires translated into objective value obligations. You say that we can't aggregate, but there are little chemicals in the brain that produce happiness. Also, no impact in context because we are all it just is a resolvable framework to the offense debate. Now, the advantage. Overview: war with North Korea will happen now, and there's only a risk that the AF by forcing the public to have a personal stake in war and rally against adventurism. His arguments about preventive strikes don't matter. My evidence literally says that it is a likely option that they are putting on the table, and it is about a question about escalation. Trump does not matter either, because it is not a question of whether the initial preventive strikes will happen. The evidence indicates that eventually it will escalate into a full-scale war, but the AF solves that because Congress would never approve invading North Korea. Now, this outweighs the just at 8-point time frame. War would happen. War could happen this year, but global economic downturn would take ages. B, reversibility. No way to prevent extinction of Korea. War breaks out but a million institutions check economic conflict. They say there's no break, but my evidence proves NOCO is a uniquely intense scenario, and Trump means we're at a way higher the risk than ever. They say debt turns readiness, but one, there's no impact of readiness. We should try to avoid wars, not fighting them. The two, we have a massive military now. No need for more borrowing. Now, they say that Trump will Trump will strike Korea regardless, but this is just AF uniqueness. A war with NOCO is coming now. Trump still needs congressional and public approval to actually declare war, which the plan prevents, even especially true in a world where Trump has done nothing he said he would do alone. Now, they say all causes, but the F solves all of these in a world where the public is actually tied to military casualties. That's the solvency. Now, they say PMCs, but one, this card says he'll use PMCs to fight ISIS. How on earth would he use private contractors to invade North Korea? This evidence is about terrorism too. This says Michael Flynn is the one causing Trump to adopt PMCs, but Flynn has gone from the administration because he colluded with the Russians. Now, he said that it's too soon to solve, but NOCO war isn't literally happening tomorrow. Kim Jong-un will eventually be aggressive. At that point, people will know their own kids could be in the war because of the plan. They say more wars will happen in the AF, but one, by link outweighs. Even if Congress people think they'll definitely win wars after the plan, they still won't want to put their literal children in danger. Two, no impact. People already think we'll win wars now because we have amazing weapons. Manpower doesn't matter. Three, Vietnam flows AF. It spurned massive public protests because of the draft that shortened the war. They say diplomats, but this is a two-sentence card from 03 and says that in Afghanistan, soldiers cooperate with locals to win battles, which just means that they're good at being militaristic. This does not solve the case. Now, the soft power arguments. One, this study is sus since there's no logical reason why conscription would increase crime. It's just a random correlation. Two, soft power doesn't shape foreign policy decisions of others. Elwood 14. The soft power concept is fundamentally flawed as a tool of foreign policy. The more seasons have to consciously project through force. Example, where the rest will see manipulation, propaganda. Mark the card of propaganda also takes out the diplomacy argument. It won't solve any impact. Also, crime doesn't punch protest. There was no war, and the F solves this because it makes military culture better since everyone's in and closes the gap. Now, the NC. One, constant will fail can't apply to states as it concerns the interference of the will course code. Two, the problem with that is how we act given free wills. The problem with politics is how we can be free in the world which we interact with others. Different domains of freedom, inner freedom, and liberty. Morality involves the will we share with everyone, just in virtue of human nature. Politics involves the will we share on the shared territory. All of those are separate domains. They say that they have to, that they turn after respect, but it doesn't matter. The government exists now and they use UTOL, which means that it's denied it can exist without consent. Now, the dissent. Also, no interrelate just proves that I have to value my own rationality, not the rationality of everyone. Now, the dissent. One, non-unique in case turns the dissent. A debt crisis coming now and preventing adventurism is the only way to solve Banda 718. America literally can't afford any more military adventurism. Military outlays pay for a large fiscal target. Americans aren't likely to cut Social Security and Medicare. Legislative reduction from pain to achieve gains that would reach 150% of GDP in 2047. That's a higher level in Greece before it's economic and political collapse. We have to start preparing for financial tsunami. That means adopting a more cautious foreign policy. A failure to act might mean destabilizing protection outweighs their uniqueness just generic econ high now, but they have no card that says that spending is low now. Two, the draft saves money taxes to finance a volunteer army are more expensive. 401, deadweight loss exceeds the sum of the training costs of country that's a large military manpower reform may find a draft more efficiently plus the tax of force service less by the alternative taxes outweighs their cards by some random military officer just asserts the cost of the plan and no impact to economic decline. Dresser 14. The aggregate data suggests otherwise. The average level of peacefulness in 2010 is the same as 07. Interstate violence has declined. Violent conflict studies confirm that recession is not triggered. The crisis generated protections, national or ethnic exclusion. We did all the important stuff.
All right. Does anyone have any questions for the affirmative about any of the arguments that was made in the way?
Pretty good. Yeah. Yeah, so his card is like, Trump wants to use PMCs to fight ISIS in the Middle East. My argument is that this doesn't say anything about normal wars. That his framework can't be applied to the state because it's about inner freedom of the will, not outer freedom that the state deals with.
There are no other arguments that the affirmative made in the 1AR that you were confused about or want more explanation? Yeah?
Okay, so on the first off case, were you trying to say liberty bad? Like,
The
what was your like sense of what you're trying to make on the first off case?
the second point was so his argument was that he tried to turn active specificity by saying that we need a mutually agreeable principle or the state can't exist. My argument was that, well, states use util nil and the state does exist, so it doesn't need to do that.
Yeah, that's true.
Would someone else over there have a question?
So the first argument was that the study doesn't actually isolate any causal inferences, which means we should doubt it. Second, there's no impact to soft power. It can be counterproductive because people will perceive it as manipulation and propaganda, and it doesn't convince other people to do anything. Also, that the AFSOLs, because it improves military culture, so in Krotzex he was like, it teaches people to be violent, but if we close the gap and have normal people in the military, it's less likely to do that. The uniqueness argument is that right now we're about to have a debt crisis because we're spending so much money, and like in a couple or like in years from now it'll snowball and we will have economic decline. The only way to solve that is to cut military spending because nothing else will be cut in this quo. So if I win my internal link to adventurism, then that turns the disad link.
Any other questions?
Wait, can you give me 1 second to catch up on flowing? Like, I haven't flown anything. Oh, sit up.
So how is everybody? Good. Good to hear. Thank you. I feel weird just like standing in silence. I know, it's like I feel like I should break into show tunes or something, but nobody wants that. People are watching the live stream? Where is it? What? I thought you were just like recording it. Oh, hello friends. The more you know. I'm not going for Soho, you'll need that.
Alright. Wait.
Is there more?
One more second.
One more second. While he does that, the order will be libertarianism, spending. The spending disad will have like a very long overview that might warrant like a separate page or something, wherever you have enough space to write a lot. And then I'll just answer all his arguments on the spending disad in order, and then the case. What's the top thing here? I think it's the first argument I made on solvency. This argument that's like, it creates an illusion where we have infinite manpower. What? What? No. The continency, the spending disad, the case. Case starting on solvency, and then I'll try to sign proofs, but I just have some like random arguments I want to go for. You good?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'm going to start now. Concede con is not actor specific, not going for the NC. You won't have any offense on it, so it doesn't matter. The spending disad, as an overview, the economy is doing fine. Investment is high. The Fed is slowly raising interest rates. It's secure, and everyone's predicting things will go well in the foreseeable future. It is fragile, though. The effects of the 2009 recession are still here, and the economy won't bounce back entirely. Continued confidence is key. That's Wiseman, and they have conceded. The plan costs a ton of money. It'll take $3 trillion just to train new soldiers, and then $1 trillion each additional year, which they've not contested. There's no way to afford conscription without spiraling into even more debt. That is Lacey, and a massive spending frenzy
frenzy like the plan causes an economic freakout. Laundry list of warrants. Creditors will lose confidence and demand higher interest rates, will require the government to tax more. That reduces economic activity, or just forces the government to add to its debt, causing a debt spiral. Hiked interest rates will signal a decline, causing investors to pull out. A weaker economy will have lower wages and career opportunities. The impact is massive debt, which will be significant and prolonged. That's bocce. And decline causes diversionary war. Leaders want to distract attention from problems at home through war. Argentina's invasion of the Falklands and psychological theory are evidence in favor of this. Trump is predisposed to more belligerent behavior, which is proven by every word that comes out of his mouth, such as, we will turn the sand to glass, and actually striking Syria. If the economy falters during his presidency, psychological models indicate that he will initiate multiple major conflicts every year. Prefer our evidence is most specific. That's false here. The impact outweighs in terms of the case. One, it entails multiple major conflicts, each of which has its own risk of extinction, which means we have a much higher probability. Second probability, all of our evidence is great, and Trump's psychology magnifies our impacts, and none of their evidence assumes Trump. Third, duration, economic decline causes long-term poverty and suffering, even if the conflicts are relatively minor. Nuclear war cannot last forever, which means even if he wins this extinction impact, we've won that there will be a terrible impact that happens forever, which is just as bad. Four, economic decline makes Trump more adventurous. He'll want to distract from economic decline, which means that the impacts are inevitable, and we control the internal link to their impact. This is a conceded argument that was in the 1NC, and there's no response. That's what conceded means, whatever. Five, at best for them, econ decline means that causes massive poverty, which outweighs the F on probability. So even if they win their non-unique argument and they win their impact defense, we have won that debt happening now is much worse and causes a lot more poverty, which outweighs the F on probability. It is low scope and only goes through a few links, whereas theirs relies on a very large internal link chain. Yeah, that's all I have for the overview. The first argument he makes on the disad, this uniqueness thing. One, their evidence is from a libertarian hack at the Cato Institute. Ours is based on key economic indicators like manufacturing and the Fed, and theirs doesn't have a clear warrant. Second, their evidence references the 2017 budget outlook, not the 2018 budget outlook, which is the one they're about to pass. They don't account for Trump massively cutting the budget this year. He's going to make huge dents to the deficit. Only the plan will cause the link. Dine on 713. Trump's budget doesn't solve the deficit, though it makes a significant dent. Deep spending cuts from healthcare and education would save $3.3 trillion over the next 10 years. Third, even if there is a slow debt increase in the status quo, or we can have slow growth. Our argument is about an immediate massive spending hike, not a slow climb until 2047, which is when he says we would hit the brink. Our evidence is outweighs on time frame, and it accounts for the state of the whole economy relative to our debt, not just so that debt will slowly increase, which there is not an impact to. Off his argument that the draft saves money, the second argument on the disad. One, our card is not some random hack. They've experienced in the military and know about the cost of training officers. CX was clear that they are in the military, and they make a claim that they know it, and they have not given you a clear reason to doubt them. Apart from that, it's from an interview. Second, their evidence just asserts that it would be more expensive. They have highlighted the warrant out of this card, so you should at least prefer ours on author qualifications. They say our author is a nobody, but they don't even say who their author is. Ours is more specific because it gives the exact costs of training, and there's no way that it will save $3+ trillion, which means you should neg on this issue. Third, they don't account for the maintenance of a large army, which is a key part of their evidence. Even if training is cheap, maintenance is still another $1 trillion each year. And four, they assume a small scale draft, not conscription for every single person, so only our evidence is actually about the F, their impact defense argument. One, their evidence is about Obama. Obviously, he and Trump are a little different. Trump will engage in diversionary war, even if Obama wouldn't, because of his psychological makeup. Models confirm that is fostered. Theirs is about the Great Recession. Obama was president. No, Obama's not president. Second, even if econ decline doesn't cause war, causes massive poverty through low wages, which is an impact you've conceded, so we have an impact that still outweighs the F. 2 minutes for case is fine. The case. Starting on this, there's an illusion that they'll have infinite people argument, the first argument on solvency. Their second response to this argument disproves the F. I'll read it. Quote, people already think we'll win wars because we have amazing weapons and manpower doesn't matter. Proves our argument that adventurism will happen through bombs, not soldiers. Drones, nukes, and bombings all prove that's how it works now. We withdraw ground troops so the F doesn't solve anything. We would use a preventative strike, not send people in, and all their solvency evidence is about how we would not send people in, but that's not going to happen anyway. So vote neg on risk of a disad. Either our Vietnam argument is true, or we're right that manpower means people can win wars easily. It's not empirically that people think they can win wars easily. It's empirically disproven that they don't want to send their children. Vietnam protests did happen, but they did not happen that early. Vietnam protests only happened at the very end of the war because they've been going on so long, not because people were sending their children. Our evidence indicates that Vietnam had the most boots on the ground in any war since World War II, which means that obviously, even if there were protests, they did not happen early enough. They've also conceded our all causes arguments earlier on. Well, they haven't. They make some responses, but they're bad.
Yeah, so our argument is that Trump will use a strike, not ground troops. He says that a strike is likely to happen. We have a couple responses. One, your evidence just says a strike is an option. It doesn't say is likely to happen, which means there is no reason to believe their impact is going to happen in the status quo. We have read 2 pieces of evidence that say it's just something on the table. Second, your impact card says any exchange would be sufficient to cause the extinction impact, which means it is not about escalation. It's about a single strike happening, which they have conceded they do not solve because their argument is about people not wanting to send their children to war, not people not wanting to send bombs, because obviously they don't care about bombs surviving, which means that they do not solve for the one impact argument they've extended. Their solvency argument does not match the internal link to their advantage. We have one that they cause more wars because people think they're just infinite people we can use. Vietnam is an example of that. The spending dissat is one. The overview and all the weighing arguments are there, and the poverty argument is a good tiebreaker. What up? At best for them, even if they win the uniqueness argument and the impact defense stuff, we have a linear poverty dissad, which is the second or third card, and that outweighs the Affon probability. Yeah, Martino. So either his argument is right, which just disproves the F, or the Vietnam argument is true, and manpower means we think we can win wars easily, so conscription means we will go to more wars.
Bennett, why did you go for the spending DA, not Kant?
I conceded extra specificity, so that wasn't an option. That course guard card he read is also correct. I thought it was 3 and 3, and then I looked at the timer and realized that I had made a slight strategic error. But I meant to spend 3 and 3. I think that explanation of the solvency press argument was good enough, but I don't think it was great. So I think I would have given some more time to find that part of the flow instead of just being also this argument and find it later and then explain that argument more clearly. Yeah, I think that's probably most of what I would have done. I also probably would have done specific interaction between the Wang arguments at the top of the case, which are sort of answered in the dissad, but not explicitly answered. So I probably would have been the arguments in the dissad respond to these Wang arguments. I've conceded util, so it's about how happy we make people. Would you like your... Yes.
Case dissad. The overview on the offense. Where's my phone? Have you seen my phone? Is everyone ready?
Yes. Case dissad. I got you.
The offense on case, and then the dissad. Okay.
We're running out of samples, suggest.
Okay. Bennett concedes that the AF internal link turns the link on the disk that his only response is that it's non-unique, which means that the only thing I need to do to control the direction of the offense on the disk that is win the uniqueness debate. He's also conceded all of the weighing I did at the top of the overview for why my offense outweighs, and all of his weighing arguments were ridiculous. You've conceded that it outweighs on time frame because the nuclear war against North Korea will happen right now. At the very least, global economies need a little bit of time to untangle and result in diversionary conflict, which means that my impact comes first. He's also conceded terminal uniqueness in the last speech. He's conceded that the war with North Korea will happen right now. He makes reasons why it's inevitable, but that means that it's try or die for the F, which means that the decide doesn't matter. Now, the substance of the case debate. First, his argument is that he says that it doesn't say that the strike will happen, but yes, it does. The evidence indicates that it is that obviously if it is an option considered by military personnel, then there is a chance that it will happen. We should not be so confident that there is a 0% chance of it happening to not risk a literal nuclear war with North Korea, which means that any risk that already hawkish military people are considering this option means that we should try to prevent it as much as possible. He says that it says any exchange, but obviously this is in context of a nuclear exchange. It has to escalate to that level first. My evidence indicates that the first step will be a second Korea war. Guess what happened during the first Korean War? Ground troops in the United States went into Korea, which means that there will be at least a little bit of a perceptual reason for why people will care about the fact that their children might have a chance of going into conflict and dying, which means that the F has a chance of resolving it now. The F has a chance of resolving it now. That answers his argument about how it proves bombs. It's a question of perception. People think that if your literal son, if you are a congressman and your son has a chance of going to war, you're not so confident that, oh, it's just going to be bombs that you will support the war. No, you are concerned that your literal family member will die. Now, if I win the Bando evidence, I win the decide debate. Even if he wins econ weighing, my internal link massively turns his and outweighs the spending link to the framing issue is that he answers the uniqueness but not the turn itself. He concedes that additional military spending, which the F solves, would trigger a debt crisis. All I have to win is that other spending cuts won't happen now, because if they don't, then it's try or die for cutting military spending line by line. They say their evidence is better, but he concedes that his card isn't even spending uniqueness. It's just about generic economy, so mine is more specific. They don't account for future rising spending, and my author's not a hack just because he's a libertarian. There's no war. They say that Trump will cut funding, but he literally didn't have an argument for why the Trump budget would pass. Framing issue in this entire debate is that Trump is all talk. Trump has not passed anything. He is awful at politics. He tried to repeal Obamacare 3 times and it didn't work. They say it's a question of a spending hike, but 1, any individual war with North Korea would also instantly spike spending, and 2, that's not how debt works. Bubbles pop climatically and instantly crush the econ once it reaches a certain level. Greenpeace proves, which is what Bando compares our situation to. Now, all I need to win is that this is a little bit more important than the increase in spending that the app would cause. I'm not going for the link term, but I'm going for the fact that he literally does not have any solid piece of warranted evidence. He cites one officer in the military that is not in charge of the military. He's not in any sort of administrative office of the military. It has nothing to do with planning military policies about maintaining the military. Why would he know how much it costs? Why would he have a reliable estimate about that? And he just does not have a solid piece of evidence. Also, it outweighs because a war with North Korea would cost lots and lots of money, because we would literally have to develop the weaponry to go over there, probably a little bit more than accepting more soldiers, which means that it would just be a numerically higher spending increase. So my link outweighs. Good round. Nice.